go ahead and get started. So, good evening and welcome to the 2018 Eureka City Council 1st and 3rd Ward Candidates Forum. My name is Jerome Washington, and I'm the delegate of the Humboldt Del Norte Central Labor Council, and I'll be your moderator for the evening. This forum will give the electorate of the City of Eureka a chance to hear from candidates for the City Council. We have a lot to cover tonight, and I would want to be efficient as possible to cover the material. For those of you in the audience, please refrain from applause and from making comments. This is really important because we have a lot to cover, and the event is being recorded to rebroadcast on Humboldt Access. I would like to start by introducing the sponsoring organizations for this event: Affordable Homeless Housing Alternatives, Centro del Pueblo, Cooperation Humboldt, Move to Amend, True North Organizing, North Coast Environmental Center, North Coast People's Alliance, Humboldt Del Norte Central Labor Council, Healthcare for All, and the Eureka NAACP. I would like to thank the Eureka City Council candidates for being here tonight, as we know that their time is valuable. I would like to introduce the candidates for Ward 1, Carolyn Brooks, Leslie Castellano, Haley Lamb, Anthony Mantova, and the candidates for Ward 3, Natalie Arroyo, Jeannie Breslin, and John Fullerton. The sponsoring organizations have taken the time and effort to organize this candidate forum, and I appreciate everything they have done. Each candidate received the questions prior to tonight's forum. The way the process will go tonight is that each sponsoring organization will ask questions, and the candidates will be given 2 minutes to answer. The final question will come from me as the moderator, and because we have a lot to get through, I'll remind the candidates that they don't have to use the entire 2 minutes. When we're at 30 seconds, you're going to get a signal from over there in the corner. And I'm also going to ask that the candidates stay focused on the question before them. Again, I would like to ask the audience to refrain from applause and comments during the questions and answers so that we can get through the whole process as quickly as possible. So let's begin with the first question from Affordable Homeless Housing Alternatives from Cecilia Langen.
Right up there to the microphone. Oh, wrong way.
Oh, can I also ask that everyone turn off their cell phones, please?
Good evening. It's off.
There's a switch on there. There's a little switch. Closer. Right there.
Hello, my name is Cecilia. I represent AHA. I'm only allowed to ask one question. However, I have a couple of questions on these pamphlets or on these pages that I'm going to have you guys pass out in the desk. If you can respond to them within the next 2 weeks, we'd appreciate it. So here we go.
Can I ask that we hold off on that?
Oh, yes, I may. My question is, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled that local policies criminalizing sleeping in public are illegal. Will you support a legal campground managed by a nonprofit in Eureka? And if you do not support a safe, legal campground, what is your proposed solution to providing housing now to those who are homeless and being criminalized by Eureka's ordinance for sleeping in public?
So the first question is for John.
Okay, so I believe that the Ninth Circuit said that it was legal for them to camp on public spaces only if there was nowhere else for them to go. The problem that we have is that the question really isn't whether we have a campground or not. The question is what kind of a campground are we going to have? When the Devil's Playground was closed, and it should have been closed, the city made no real attempt to find places for those homeless that were dispersed to have another place to go. So now what we have is nobody knows for sure, but we have 20, 30, 40 illegal campgrounds all over the city. There's a campground with 2 people over there, another one with 5 people here, 3 people there, 15 at another spot. They're in the green belts around your home. They're in the gulches. They're everywhere. So I do not reject out of hand a legal campground. I want to see what the rules and how it would be formed. I would want to have a responsible group that would run it, and not with volunteers, but with paid staff. And I'm willing to talk to any group, whether it's AHA or another group, on how this would be done. So the important thing is that if the legal campground is going to be in town, that it has rules supervised by responsible people.
Okay.
Jeannie?
Thank you very much. So I support additional housing being built for low income. We have a new housing project on 7th and Myrtle coming in, and I think another one on 4th. And we also have a lot of empty lots throughout our city. I think that we need to motivate and offer incentives to our developers and our contractors, much like we did with Danco, and they created the Eureka Lodge. I think that was a great idea. I think that when we create partnerships that come together with contractors and developers, that we can do great things in Eureka. I support a homeless campground on private land managed by a nonprofit organization, but there would have to be rules. I'm one that doesn't normalize drug activity, and so I think that like the mission or others, there has to be a code of conduct to be there. I understand that there are people working with AHA to find this private property, but I would also say that we also have 40 containers, or how many containers for the Betty Chin, that were given to Betty Chin, and one of our local businesses blocked that from happening. And I would also further say that Eureka has done a lot for our homeless community. This is a problem that is way beyond just Eureka, and that I would also work to reach out to the city and the state for responsibility for our homeless population.
Thank you.
Natalie?
So I support a dispersed site model and managed environment for temporary and emergency shelter. So I think there are a few ways that could look. It could look like private properties. It could include partnering with faith-based groups who have access to properties throughout the community. And this includes a need for people who live in their cars to park somewhere specific and safe where they have access to sanitation facilities like restrooms and trash disposal. And I think that's a win-win for folks who are currently not able to find housing and living in cars for whatever reason, as well as folks in neighborhoods who have concerns about people not being able to use facilities, et cetera, in their neighborhoods. I also believe that we need to keep the focus on permanent housing first and support successful efforts such as this to work with landlords to support them in housing formerly homeless and high-need individuals. We need to reduce roadblocks to development of more housing, including multifamily housing complexes and second units throughout the city. And finally, I'm really concerned about the backlash of people's NIMBYism and stopping projects that could provide some major improvements in the city. And I think this is everyone's responsibility to change the way we talk about proposed solutions and the benefits. There are so many win-win opportunities, like the example with the trailers that were donated by PG&E to the city, and finding a place for those to exist and to house people and be a transition step between temporary shelter and long-term shelter elsewhere would be a great alternative. And that's an option that would provide people with some rental history so that when they are able to move on to another housing location, they would have some rental history under their belt with a, quote, regular landlord. So those are some options that I would like to see happen.
Thank you.
Anthony?
Yeah, it was great meeting you earlier today. Thank you for the question. It's one of the most important questions we have, and it's the reason this room is full of people, because all of us, every single day, in our own way, deal with, let's just say, the homeless. Now, you guys have probably studied me a little bit in my positions I look at the homeless community and I look a little deeper. I try to find strategic solutions for all the different groups, including those down their luck, including those that are mentally ill, and of course the criminal drug addicts. And please understand, when I'm talking about these different groups, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm trying to be compassionate, trying to find solutions for each group. Housing first can work. It ought to work. Don't listen to the negativity for 1 minute. Don't believe for 1 minute that we cannot set up a place for people down their luck to go, for people that have drug issues to go, and for those down their luck. Don't believe it for a moment. As a matter of fact, where the issues come into play, we have a lot of different charities that want to help, but where the issues really become a problem are barriers. Some charities have high barriers to entry, some have low, and some have no barriers. I will happily work with AHA if I get elected, if we can agree around the concept of drug testing and drug counseling. To me, drug testing isn't a demand, it's an expectation, because I want what's best for every single person. Except for you, Virginia, but we like each other anyway.
No.
But the fact of the matter is, we can find solutions, and I want to be your city council person because I want to help you find those solutions. There's no reason. Look at the Eureka Rescue Mission. They have two things going on. They have high barrier to entry if you want to go through their program, but they have a very low barrier if you just want to go there for the day and hang out in there and under one of their buildings, one of their roofs. There's a lot right now, a vacant lot right next to the rescue mission that's for sale. If you guys want to buy it and want to get private funding to buy it, I'll be your biggest supporter, as long as we can agree on the drug testing and we can make it something that's palpable to the rest of the community.
So I'm going to ask the audience to hold their comments.
Thank you, guys.
Haley?
All right, well, I would agree with Natalie about the parked cars in churches. I think that's a great idea in the church parking lots. And I do support a campground run by a nonprofit on private land. As long as people with the property of the campground keep their property up to code. John Fullerton was right when he said that there's already a lot of these campgrounds existing. However, you know, from my experience as being a previous code enforcement officer, a lot of these campgrounds aren't up to code. So I would definitely support a campground like this as long as it is up to code. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leslie?
Hi. Well, I support a wide range of transitional housing. You know, and I think in order to meet the complexity of need, we need a lot of different options. And we actually don't want to make barriers to participation in those options, because really we want to house people. I've done some study of Opportunity Village in Eugene, which is a very effective, long-standing tiny house village. It's very affordable. You know, people pay $2,000 to $3,000 per house, and you know, some of that money is earned through nonprofit work. Some is residents also pay into sweat equity. And the thing about things like that is they build community, and they create ways in which people feel valued and feel that their voices can then be part of society, which I think is what we all want, honestly. You know, like often when I talk with people on the street, there's a huge divide between people who feel that they can participate in all of society and people who feel like they're othered or kind of placed only at the receiving end of social services. And I really want to create ways in which people are welcome as members of society. All people are.
Thank you, Leslie.
Carolyn?
Yes, I do support a legal campground on private land run by nonprofits. If it's something that doesn't cost the city any money and it doesn't increase our taxes, I'm all for it. We have a serious homeless problem, or situation, I shouldn't say problem, situation that we really have been reactive and slow to react to, that now is the time that we really have to make some changes in the way of how we go about, this. I believe as long as there is police presence, social support, retraining to be self-sufficient, and honest drug rehabilitation. And what I mean by drug rehabilitation is a real detox center, not sempervirens, a real detox center, not using our mental health resources, a full-on inpatient rehabilitation center, and then the aftercare support for however long it may take, having a worker attached to a resident for as long as it takes for them to make sure that they don't, fall back into bad habits, because it's hard getting off of drugs and alcohol and being released to your same environment. And that's what they always say, is to move from your environment. But it's so small here. Where can you go? So I do support that, and I think, I don't believe homelessness is a crime. I don't support the criminalization of the homeless. However, illegal camping is illegal, and we find ourselves in a tough position with this quandary about, we have these two things. Get the homeless homed and have the police enforce our laws. And so that's a big problem that as an organization we have to get together and talk about.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia.
You're welcome. You want these?
Okay, so the next question is going to come from Central del Pueblo, and that's from Emily Velez.
Hello, thank you for having us here. I'm Emily Velez, representing Central del Pueblo, and I wanted to ask everyone, do you support Measure K, the sanctuary county measure?
And that's the Gene Research.
Thank you very much. So I would state that the state of California already is a sanctuary state. The county of Humboldt is concerned with the cost of Measure K. The city of Eureka has already voted to protect its citizens. Sheriff Consul has already stated that he's not turning anyone in something that they don't do unless it's a felony. And I would say to you that we are a nation governed by laws, and that no matter who you are, you don't get a pass if you're a felon or you break the law. It's unfortunate that some bad apples ruin it for those that are hardworking and honest individuals, but we are a nation of laws. And this is sort of beyond, it's a national issue, not only just a local issue. But I think Eureka has done its share. Thank you.
Natalie?
Well, I've already endorsed Measure K, and I believe a countywide approach is the way to go. At the core of my support is the desire for residents in our community to feel safe, be able to work, contribute to the local economy, send their kids to school, and contact law enforcement about their problems without fear. This doesn't mean that we won't focus on serious crimes. This doesn't preclude law enforcement from enforcing on crimes that are serious and significant in the community. And I want law enforcement to be able to enforce these laws, keeping our community safe. The Eureka Police Department has finally been able to increase officer staffing thanks to providing raises and some intensive recruitment that we've been doing. And we have a backlog of need for problem-oriented policing, code enforcement, and traffic patrols. I want our officers to be able to focus on serious crimes, not be tied up doing the job of the federal government. As a federal employee with the Coast Guard Reserve, when I'm on duty, I expect to do my job. I'm not going to send EPD out to investigate an oil spill in federal waters, for example. And I think the reverse is true as well. There's no reason I see for EPD or other regional law enforcement to be doing a federal job when we have limited resources and great need for policing in our community. And so that's why I'm fully in support of Measure K.
Anthony?
So this might make some of you feel a little bit uncomfortable when we talk about Measure K, because it sounds like it's good policy. It sounds good, this idea that we want to keep families together. I don't think anybody wants to keep families together more than I do, and I really mean that. But sometimes policies actually do more damage than good. As Jeannie mentioned, yes, we're already a sanctuary state, so if you're on board with it, we've already got that going on. But here's where it's a serious problem, and here's how I would argue it actually hurts families, the families you want to help. Let's say that ICE wants to talk to somebody in the jail. They call up local PD. Local PD says, well, no, we got this Measure K on the books. We can't really help you set this up. So what happens is ICE doesn't just go away. ICE shows up, because they're the federal government. They show up and they go to the family of that inmate. They go and see his mom, his dad, they visit his uncles, and at 4 in the morning, they're knocking on doors. At 4 in the morning, they're harassing people. I want to keep ICE working with the jails, working with our professionals. I don't want them just showing up anytime they feel like it to people's homes, hauling people away, and making a scene. And I think we should keep families together. But if Measure K were better written, I would probably support it. Here's the problem. Measure K is 15 pages. The first 7 are just sort of a all-around condemnation of the U.S. government. Well, look, make it more focused. Pick an actual issue to fight. Don't just, if you read Measure K, and I encourage you to do it, it's only 15 pages. The first 7 pages attack the U.S. government on all these different, and some of it I actually agree with, but they attack the U.S. government on all these different points. And I'm sorry, this is important. If you want to keep families together, which I believe you do and I do too, this is important. Rewrite Measure K, actually make it do something constructive, and I will be the first to support it. I mean that.
That is an interesting point, Anthony. So I want to say that yes, I am in support of Humboldt County as a sanctuary. People traveling in this area should feel safe to call first responders, get fair treatment and support from the community. But I would also like everyone to know that California is already a sanctuary. Governor Jerry Brown signed a sanctuary state bill that limits cooperation with local law enforcement and federal immigration. That's great. I would also like all people to know that our local law enforcement does not typically involve themselves with immigration status and enforcing immigration law. I've spoken with multiple law enforcement officers, the county sheriff, different sheriff deputies, Chief Watson, and I'm aware of their current policy and feel that they're doing a great job right now in regards to this issue. Lastly, I just want to say always remember to call the police if you witness a crime or if you're a victim, no matter what color you might be, or you know what I'm saying. No matter what country you might be from, or if you're just traveling through. So, thank you.
Leslie?
I am proud to be an endorser of Measure K. I also read the measure and found that the first pages really set the context for the measure, which I feel like is valuable when we're creating law. I'm also a supporter of pathways to citizenship for people, so that ultimately then perhaps we won't need measures as strong as Measure K because people will be citizens. But we all have to have something we're working towards. I believe it's important to respect all people's rights. I also support Measure K because the people who are most vulnerable in this community came forward with this proposal, and I value them. Measure K protects children and families. It encourages reporting of people because they're not afraid of being deported, of crimes. Thank you. We all saw, the national news and the terrible sorrow of children being separated from their families. And, I don't think that's the kind of place I want to live in. And citizens do make the laws, people make the laws, and we can create laws that value people. The cost of Measure K is very low for the protection it provides. One of the largest potential costs would be protecting children whose parents were taken away, and I think that's worth it. We wouldn't have argued at the cost. I went to the rally on Wednesday, and I saw Brian Jessup speak, the Unitarian pastor, and we wouldn't have balked at the cost of protections during the Civil Rights era and for slavery, for ending slavery. I would like to see Humboldt be a shining example for people. I think we can do that. I think it's a beautiful thing to bring to this community.
Carolyn?
As far as Measure K, no, I do not support, and the residents of Ward 1 that I have spoken to do not support Measure K. We believe the law is the law and should be followed. On top of that, where is the excess money that this would cost us coming from? There has to be a tax increase in there somewhere, and I don't want to be blindsided by it later after the proposition is passed. I'm not for increasing taxes just for the sake of increasing taxes. On the other hand, I strongly believe in helping those who are attempting to follow our rules. I believe in helping DACA applicants that are trying to become citizens. I met a family going door to door where the mother, her license expired and she had to go down to San Francisco to get it renewed and couldn't afford the trip there and back. I would have no problem, and I offered, and she said no, but I have no problem starting a fundraiser or having an event to raise money to help her and her family get down and get her license renewed, because she's trying to follow our laws, jump through all of our hoops, trying to become naturalized, and I have no problem with that. I have a problem with people that are here illegally or undocumented and then want protection. I can't get protection from the law. I don't see why that would be okay to give it to someone who's not a citizen of this country. So we're not in favor of it. I'm sorry. Thank you.
And again, I'll ask the audience to hold their comments. John.
No, I do not support Measure K. I do support legal and open immigration. I want to see an expanded legal immigration system that will allow workers to come in during certain times of the year with California needs workers, and then lets them go home free and without interruption. Sanctuary cities, counties, states encourages illegal immigration. Illegal immigration has an unintended effect on the depressing wages and benefits for the rest of the workers in the state. Also too, like it's been said before, this Measure K for Humboldt County is unnecessary because California is already a sanctuary state, and there is talk that there's going to be lawsuits involved. That's going to be expensive. Why get Humboldt County wrapped up in paying for these legal fees? So I do not support Measure K. I do support an expanded legal immigration system.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
Sorry, Emily, sorry. The next question is from the Central Urban Council from John Frum.
Welcome. Do you support a living wage ordinance for the City of Eureka? Yes or no, and then give me an explanation. Thank you.
This question goes to Natalie first.
Great. So also thank you to all the organizations who are putting together questions, and thank you to all of you. I know that the moderators mentioned that our time is valuable, but your time is valuable too, so thank you so much. I do support this, and I've supported wage increases before, even when it was politically challenging. Today, Eureka has historically low unemployment and is seeing business growth and record new business license applications from a broad range of sectors, but wages have not gone up proportionately. I learned a lot about perspectives on this issue 4 years ago, and I believe that it would make sense to consider a county-wide ordinance, and I would prefer to see it go that way, but I want to support appropriate living wages for working people in this community. I will always support wages that keep pace with cost of living increases in our region and make it possible for people to afford to meet the needs of themselves and their families, and also contribute so much to the local economy. I also believe that the narrative about Eureka not being business friendly is not rooted in fact, or if it is, it's rooted in something a long time ago, and our staff have been making a lot of changes to be more business friendly at the direction of the council. I always want to be sure that the local business community feels heard, and if this issue were to move forward, I would want to have extensive meetings with the business community to hear their input.
Anthony.
Well, the answer is no. And you know how much fun it is saying that in the Union Temple? I just have to say it. But let's explain it. We're not doing it for shock value. We're doing it because we want to increase more business. We want economic expansion in Eureka. You can't do that by applying more artificial pressure on business owners, on people that hire people. You just can't do that. So let's get into it. Raising the minimum wage, I gotta tell you guys, it's been great for the robotics industry. Because service jobs disappear every single time you raise the minimum wage $1. And I have here the minimum wage increases for every single year. And it's interesting, it's very telling. Every year it goes up. because we voted on it in the last election. But it's interesting that if you're a business and you have 25 or more employees, you have to pay even more. It makes you wonder, here in Eureka, how many businesses are staying away from that 25 mark? How many businesses are at 15 or 20 or 23 when they could actually be hiring more people? You see, every time you raise the minimum wage, you make it harder for business to happen in Eureka. And business is not exactly flourishing in Eureka. So that's why I'm saying no to this. It would be great if we could all make $1 million an hour, but it doesn't work that way. There is something called the market. Prices are dictated based off of what we value our services at. And this is not good for medical either. If we can have economic expansion, businesses would be more willing to have benefit packages that include health care. You're not going to get that if you push these living wage increases on businesses. It's not going to happen. Again, what I like to argue is that sometimes a solution is worse than what it's trying to cure. And that's just another case here. It's not business friendly. It hurts the service industry really hard. And the track record is disastrous. How many businesses, if this were to happen in Eureka, how many businesses would just move outside the Eureka city limits and operate there instead? Not good for Eureka, especially not now when we are struggling to maintain our industries.
Haley?
So as someone who has been through the Small Business Development Center in Eureka and is a major in business and political science, and as someone who has worked full-time minimum wage jobs, I feel like I'm just going to say yes, I do support a living wage ordinance in Eureka, but more importantly, I want to focus on the middle class coming back into our community, and so this kind of has to be done really carefully. I believe that we should have an ordinance that addresses jobs that require prior knowledge and experience to have higher income than minimum wage. In this city, for example, to become a preschool teacher, you need to have some college education and prior experience to the position, and yet preschool teachers are only paid minimum wage. I would like to see Eureka become a place where business owners pay their employees a fair amount for the work they provide and prior experience required for the position. Minimum wage jobs used to be equivalent to entry-level positions, but that's no longer the case. In California, we will also see wage increases. The minimum wage will be at $12 per hour starting in January and will continue to rise until we get to $15 an hour. So that's just my education on that. Thank you.
Leslie?
Yes, I do support a living wage ordinance for Eureka, but I do agree with Natalie that it would be more effective countywide, and I think it would be great to work on that as well. And as someone who taught preschool for 4 years, I agree that it'd be great to see preschool teachers and people who work with young children get paid more. Let's see. I am also proud to say that the largest small manufacturer in Eureka pays $15 an hour and provides health care for their employees. I think that's something that Eureka can be really proud of. I also know a number of small business owners who really see that the well-being of their employees is what makes their business great, and those are the people who help give the color and flavor and provide the work for the business. In 2017, the wealthiest 10% of families, this is nationwide, had 76% of the total wealth. So I don't think it's an issue of money. I think it's more of where the money goes ultimately. I do think something, in addition to working towards a living wage, would be to work at the state level and the national level to increase the earned income tax credit for low-wage workers, and then raise taxes on upper income earners. And this would provide a more long-term solution to questions around minimum wage. But right now we don't have control of that. So thank you.
Carolyn?
No, I do not support a living wage ordinance. I think that's another ordinance that we just don't need to have on the books. I believe experience and aptitude should warrant the pay you receive starting at federal minimum wage. I understand the state minimum wage can't be changed, and I am not trying to say go back and fight that, but I'm just, there shouldn't be a living wage. I believe there should be an apprenticeship programs started at the city and county levels. And the handicapped should be on a curve so they're not left behind, but they are still expected to perform to a certain standard in order to make more money. I believe the apprenticeship programs would be very helpful with our service industries even, as low as service industry, all industries, talking to labor councils, trying to see what kind of programs we could set up. But I believe that for employees, their exceptional performance should relate to merit-based increases in wages, not a set increase just because you showed up for work that day. This could be achieved by having many discussions with the various labor unions to get input on implementing successful apprenticeship programs and allow employees to know that they're worth something and not just I'm showing up and I'm gonna just do my job as little as I can, but you're worth something, so you're actually getting an increase in pay.
Perfect. John?
So this is where having somebody on the city council with my business experience and my knowledge of the business community would be very helpful. I'm opposed to any artificial wage measure that is targeted for Eureka only. Just like Measure R was a huge mistake 4 years ago because it would have put Eureka businesses at an extreme competitive disadvantage to other businesses located even right outside the city limits. And it would have cost Eureka jobs. It would have cost us some of our local businesses who would have gone out of business. Now, a living wage ordinance sounds good, but it's really a little bit confusing. Any wage measure, by the way, on Measure R, after we got it defeated with over 62% of the vote, the state went ahead and raised the minimum wage, and they did it the right way. They made it statewide, and they made it phased in over a number of years. So in just a few years from now, the state minimum wage will be $15 an hour. So I went to a government website to find out what is a living wage, because it's a very vague term and nobody can really tell me what it is. And I found it did not help my confusion. So it was saying, and this is for Humboldt County specifically, but the living wage for one adult is only $11.50 an hour. But if you have one adult with 3 children, the living wage is $41 an hour. And it goes on from there. One adult, 2 children is $31 an hour. So you're going to have to do a better job of defining what a living wage is. Does that mean if I have 2 employees and one has 2 children and the one is a single adult, I pay them dramatically different wages?
All right, Jeannie?
Thank you very much. So my issue with this is, again, define living wage. It's a subjective ordinance or expression, because what a living wage for me doesn't mean necessarily it's a living wage for you. I used to live in Orange County. I can no longer afford to live in Orange County anymore. The wages don't meet that. So I would also say that Governor Jerry Brown has signed, as we've all talked about, to increase the California minimum wage to $15 an hour over the next 4 years. My concern about this is this would be double what many other states in our country have. Some states are only at $7 an hour. I have a marketing background and a business background. If I'm elected to the council, one of the things that I want to do is support economic growth economic expansion. I want to support businesses that can offer jobs to our community and not drive businesses out. So again, we need to support businesses and startups so they can provide jobs, and that would be my concern. There's not a set amount of what exactly living wage is, and I need to know more about that, and that would have to be fair across the board.
Okay, so our next question comes from Cooperation Humboldt and it's Desiree Davenport.
Hi. Cooperation Humboldt is piloting a series of alternative economic approaches to give our community sustainable, non-exploitive options based on our interdependence, including establishing a public bank, exploring options for cooperative housing, and empowering communities to raise more food of their own. Would you be willing to meet regularly with us to explore policy changes that would facilitate this work?
The first answer is going to be Anthony.
Desiree, congratulations on your campaign. I hope it goes well. You should have provided the folks up here a thesaurus for that question. Some very big words I'm having a little bit of trouble with. We got sustainable, we got, I think, eco-groovy in there. I'm going to try to take that question on in several parts. Let's get to it. First of all, public bank, I believe we have one. It wasn't well defined in the question, but because there's different types of public banks. We have Coast Central Credit Union. That is a public bank because the public is taking the public is taking their funds and they are keeping it local. They're keeping the money local. It's the definition of keeping the money local. So I would need a little bit more information on what kind of public bank, because for example, the cannabis industry is having a rough time putting all its cash in one place. Are you talking about that kind of public bank? I don't know. Now, I think where you're going is something more along the communal side of things, community gardens, cooperative gardens, things like that. I have no problem with community gardens. Gardens are great. But it comes down to the volunteers, and it comes down to, are they going to put in the time and take it seriously? You know, it's an interesting example. I don't mean to jump across the world, but in North Korea, most people have to volunteer in the big public fields, and they have to do work out there. But then when they get home, they're allowed a backyard, a very small backyard, where they grow their own food. Turns out, the food in their own backyard, the tomatoes and the potatoes, whatever they're growing, are much better in their own backyard than in the big public gardens. So I'm not putting down public gardens, but I think if you're going to do it, make sure that you're taking it seriously and you have a good group of folks doing it. So to answer your question, if you're doing something like that, I'm happy to talk with you because it's good for the community. Of course I'll meet with you. So I'm having trouble with the question. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I was just joking earlier. But the fact of the matter is I don't totally understand the question, and anything that you want to do that's good for the community, I will be the first to meet with you because that's what I want to do.
Okay. Haley?
All right, thank you, Cooperation Humboldt, for asking the question. I want to say that yes, and I really like that this group is doing some footwork. It sounds like a bunch of interesting ideas, and I was very pleased to be invited to your meeting. And that goes for anyone, from the far left or the far right. You invite me to your meeting and I'll show up. I think that it's really important to get all different perspectives, and I try to show up to as many meetings as I can. So I just want to give you my email if you want. It's humboldtgrace@gmail.com, and you can email me and I will show up to your meeting. Thank you.
Leslie?
Yes, I would be willing to meet regularly with folks at Cooperation Humboldt. I already have attended quite a few meetings with folks at Cooperation Humboldt, so I can easily answer that question. So just to clarify, the difference between a bank that's open to the public and a public bank is that one is owned by the public. So it varies where the profits go. So just to make that clear, so it's not too confusing. Let's see, I'm very excited about regional economic possibilities and regional economic development, and I think creating local initiatives is something that really supports this. I admire the work that Cooperation Humboldt does to build cooperative economies which are more sustainable, and they build economic opportunities, but they also build relationships, which really I think are the things that kind of see us in the long run. There's successful cooperative economic models around the world that are happening in action. If you're curious, I invite you to do a little research. Let's see. The thing I like also about these kinds of models is that they're particularly useful for people who might not have access to traditional economic opportunities because of racial and economic inequalities. And so it's very important that we have a variety of different kinds of models and ones that really build the possibility for all different kinds of people to participate. I also just want to say, if you're a far-right group that has meetings that are based on hate, I will not be attending, but I will go to a variety of meetings.
Carolyn?
Yes, I would be more than willing to meet regularly. I believe in a cooperative environment as long as there is a return on our investment. This means the city's efforts need to have some return without increasing taxes to help the residents be self-sufficient. I'm all for anything in the community that does not increase taxes and helps promote the community as a whole. I would love to promote the community gardens. I have one by my house, which seems to have been productive for many years. I can even see and support a poultry farm, farm-to-table living, hydroponic gardens that grow plants and have fish in the bottom where the water is recycled and fertilized from the fish through the top, and then the fish eat all the algae and keep the pond clean. I can totally see that, and I would completely support that as long as it did not cost us an arm and a leg, because right now we have so many pressing issues. We really have to settle on solving our pressing problems right now before we can even attempt to go on to other issues like this. But I would definitely support it. I also believe it would be this hydroponic garden idea would be a perpetual system that could go on for decades. And a portion of, especially the community gardens, if we could have many of those, a portion could go to the homeless. We can have a lot of food where, the homeless can come and forage and get their stuff. We can have excess to give away as, part of the food bank. I totally would come to your meetings.
Okay, John?
Yes, I would be happy to meet with your group to explore different ideas that you have and to help you with them. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by some of these terms, a public bank. The City Council recently asked city staff to explore that idea, and city staff came back saying it would be very expensive and beyond the means of Eureka alone, and there's not that expertise on the city staff to do that. But I'd like to hear what exactly you mean and how we get that done. And empowering communities to raise more of its own food is always a good idea. We have a number of community gardens already in Eureka. It would be nice to have some more on private land, or if it's city land, it's city unused land. I know there used to be rules against having vegetable gardens in your front yards, and happily most of those rules are gone now. So sure, I'll be glad to meet with your group.
Jeannie?
Thank you very much. So I'm all about empowering communities and building communities. I have worked for many years in our city through Neighborhood Watch, through the I Like Eureka campaign, and I don't have all the answers, but I certainly would meet with anyone. I love the exchange of ideas. We grow as a community when we're able, nothing happens, we don't learn anything in a tunnel. So I'm open to meeting with others. I have a lot of background that I would be happy to share with. I'm marketing and business and public relations. I'd love to hear how this could go. Again, I would agree with John in that the city was concerned that we don't have the power to do a private, I think Austin asked about that, a private bank. But I do support, like Redwood Capital, that's a local bank, and support local, and of course I would be happy to meet with you should I be elected.
Okay. Natalie?
Great. So I support these concepts because they are intended to increase our resilience. So here behind the redwood curtain, in a lot of ways we really depend on each other, and having cooperative efforts that help us meet our own needs collaboratively and in conjunction with our neighbors is always a great idea. And I fully intend to continue supporting research into a Northern California regional public bank. The concept that was brought forward wasn't necessarily just for the city of Eureka. The county of Sonoma is looking into it, and others. And the concept is really in its infancy, but I encourage those who are interested in it to show up when we talk about it at public meetings and participate in an all-volunteer task force if folks are interested in doing that, which wouldn't take any resources from the city to look into. I completely support projects that help support people's resilience, like I said, and really those include things like community gardening. There's an extensive network of community gardens in our county and several in Eureka, and they already do provide food to those in need, as well as families who just don't have access to places to grow food. So that's very important to people's immediate health and well-being. I support cooperative housing. There's the Marsh Commons in the region and other cooperative housing models out there. Anything that can get more people housed is a good thing in my book. And cooperative businesses, because we need all kinds of business in Eureka. Most of these are not concepts that the government will need, but we can make them easier to implement and provide social and political support and be available to meet. So I would absolutely be happy to meet. And just in closing, I want to say that our staff have spoken very positively about Cooperation Humboldt and how practical and forward-thinking Cooperation Humboldt is, and are really looking forward to working with the group too.
Okay, so the next question is going to come from Healthcare for All, and Ms. Catherine Duncan.
First, I would like to thank you all for being here this evening. Healthcare for All's question is, do you support or not a single-payer improved Medicare for all healthcare system for California and in this country? And if yes, how will you actively work in your political capacity to move this issue forward? If no, what do you see as the alternative way healthcare access for all can be realized?
Okay, first person to answer is going to be
So, I'm lucky as I'm on my father's health care insurance until I'm 26. However, I know that many people are not that lucky, and I'd like to press this issue. So yes, I do support Medicare for All. I would like to work more closely with elected officials I've already had meetings with and I'm already got relationships with, such as Mike McGuire and Jim Wood, to make further progress and push the issue forward. Thanks.
Okay, Leslie?
Yes, I do support single-payer Medicare. I've already participated in events and actions in support of single-payer healthcare. A group I founded, Societies for Poetic Action, which creates events and responses to social and environmental justice work. Participated in a action at Jim Wood's office, actually, because he shelved the public health care bill, which I thought was unfortunate. Let's see, Eureka, it's interesting, spends $2.5 million per year on employee health care, which is significant. So in a way, some of our tax money is going to some public health care. So I think if we were smarter about how we use this tax money, and especially if you think about how much that probably averages out to or equals up to statewide, I think we could use that money much more efficiently and provide health care to everyone. Let's see, I think that the City Council could support such a proclamation for public health care, and I would like to make it a priority for the League of Cities, because I think cities across California would benefit greatly and have more resources available if there was public health care. Let's see, I'll continue to show up at events and help organize the support of public health care along the way.
Okay, Carolyn?
No, I do not support single payer for any health care, not just Medicare. I believe there's a way to cut health care costs by using some of the same practices that the VA, Stanford, and other large hospitals have implemented, namely telehealth or teledoc appointments where a resident can go to their local primary care physician's office and have a teleconference with their doctor or specialist. Just like auto insurance in the 90s, healthcare needs to be able to cross state lines. That would be a way we would actually decrease health insurance costs, and I am more than welcome to explore any kind of medical co-op. I believe in cooperative efforts, so I'm a big fan of the medical cooperatives. I just haven't seen any in our area, so I would totally support that. But as far as single payer, that's a cost, that's a goal and expense that this city and county just cannot afford at this time.
Okay. John?
So it's no secret that the present healthcare system is a mess, and health insurance has some to do with that. I used to be opposed to a single payer healthcare system, but in the last 5 or 10 years, I've been slowly changing my mind and coming around to it. I used to have 2 large doctor practices as clients, and they, even with 7 or 8 doctors in each of these practices, their overhead was extraordinarily expensive. And they were having to hire a $70,000 a year full-time accountant just to do their paperwork because they were applying to all these different health insurance companies and Medicare and keeping track of everything. So both of those practices are now gone. They've been absorbed into the hospital and open door clinic because the larger those systems get, the more they can absorb the overhead expense. And I also have 6 to 8 individual doctors as clients, and I'll tell you, they're all in favor of exploring a single-payer healthcare system. There's a lot of things wrong with our medical system. Malpractice insurance can cost a doctor up to $45,000 a year. And getting reimbursed fairly by the insurance companies is a problem. Getting reimbursed fairly by Medicare is a big problem. But something needs to be changed. I want to look at the details of any single-payer systems plans that come up, because the devil is in the details. But I think it's something we need to start exploring.
So one of the things I did before coming here is did a little research, and I looked into Canada's socialized health program. And as I was reading about that, some of the issues that I have experienced even locally has come up. For instance, there was a cancer patient who couldn't get the right medication in Canada and had to come to the United States to get that approved. That would be a real concern for me. I've had some medical issues this year, and my own doctors tell me that, or complain to me, that insurance companies are already controlling and restricting their ability to practice good medical care. I had to wait 8 months. I need a new hip, but I want to do the selection first, then I'll get the hip. But I waited 8 months, constant barrage to just even get a scooter so I could get around. I have asthma. It took me 8 months, constant barrage to try to even get Brio. I've had asthma since I was 6 years old. It's changed my life. So I'm concerned that some of the it will be in the issues. I'm concerned that some of the single-payer programs might restrict medical care that would otherwise be available. And a perfect example, I do believe that when you restrict competition, or that competition is always good for the consumer. I used to pay an exorbitant amount for car insurance. I went to Costco, and rather than paying $1,200, I'm now paying $400. It's because that company was out of state. I think that we need to have the right to be able to shop and get the best deal.
Great. So the council provided a letter of support for SB 562 in support of single-payer healthcare in California because of our robust economy, aging population, and so much of what this could afford. I support a massive overhaul in our healthcare system and hope to see the implementation of a single-payer system and support it in any way I can. And really locally, that looks like meeting with decision makers at a much higher level and providing letters of support to back the ideas that come forward. I've also met with multiple healthcare providers who could no longer afford to operate in our current system, especially within the past 2 to 3 years. These doctors noted that only large healthcare conglomerates seem able to manage the onerous and complex billing and management processes. I believe single payer could reduce inefficiencies and save families a lot of money, which they would then in turn be able to use to meet their basic needs and inject money into the local economy. And I'm humble enough to admit that I don't know all the logistics, so I aim to learn more. In the meantime, I want to do as much as possible to support healthcare workers who are already in Humboldt, as well as draw more medical professionals to our area through great quality of life resources. I strongly supported the formation of a medical residency program in Eureka and called meetings to see how the City of Eureka could help move this forward, which was one of my campaign promises 4 years ago.
Anthony?
You and I have got to start being honest with each other. It's campaign season. There's not one thing the local city council can do to advance healthcare in this country. Healthcare is so important. I'm not going to belittle your intelligence by trying to tell you that there's something I can do about it. Having said that, this is decided in Washington, D.C. This is decided in Sacramento. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's been going on for a long time. Medicare, quick history lesson, Medicare for all. It was first proposed by Richard Nixon, oddly enough, and it was Ted Kennedy that ended up blocking it. Now my point is not to get into Democrats or Republicans, who cares? My point is, that's happening far away. This is so far above our pay grade, healthcare. I'm against a single payer because it doesn't work, flat out. But that doesn't mean I don't want people to have access to quality healthcare. A lot of you that are seasoned citizens, notice I didn't say senior, seasoned citizens have access to the AARP Medical Coalition Plan. It's a great plan. I think my parents are on it. It's a fantastic plan. There's all kinds of organizations that have healthcare plans that have low barriers to entry. And this is just one more of those things where the policy, it might sound good, but instead of the city council focusing on showing solidarity with something over in DC, I want them to take care of our roads. I want them to take care of providing economic expansion and doing what they're meant to do. It's not a big salary we get, but spend it making economic expansion because, again, the more businesses that thrive, the more health benefits the employees will have access to. One leads to the other. And I would say don't hate, participate on this. The more businesses that can offer health packages, the more people get health care. Bottom line. So it is the role of the city council to find innovative ways to bring economic expansion for all different brackets, low skill, high skill, whatever. That's what it's all about. And I value you because I go door to door and talk to you.
Okay, so the next question is going to come